Morning everybody, we're here in a field of mustard. It's being grazed by sheep, and let's have a quick explanation of how we established it, what we're considering and what grazed animals can contribute towards your soils. I know there are a lot more than this, half a dozen or so sheep in this field, but we're out in a field of mustard, so this is part of our regenerative practice. Here we've planted a cover crop. It's a mustard vetch mix, and it was broadcast with our Technique boom spreader and just rolled in. So the seed was scattered on the top, rolled in, and this is the result 2 months later. So it's pretty good. It's up to sort of mid-thigh, and the sheep are in here grazing away. So by way of recap, the reason we are doing this is harks all the way back to core regenerative principles and fundamentally the movement of the great herds of bison over the Great Plains. So the Great Plains is generally considered to have the best topsoil in the world, similar to actually Ukraine and the Soviet plains. Both were established in the same method. So that is with large herds of grazing animals being regularly moved on by large carnivores, sort of wolves and stuff like that. So let's take the American example. Big herd of bison migrating across the plains. This is sort of rotational grazing. So they come in, hit it hard, munch it down, and then move on. It enables the plants to regenerate and keep growing because they get eaten once, eaten down, and then they have an opportunity to regrow. If you, in an agricultural system, if you have stop grazing where the animals are in the same field for a long period of time, like all summer, then the plants don't get a chance to recover. They start to grow, especially with sheep, and they like their grass short, so they'll come on back and nibble off all the new growth. So it's really stressful on the grass, and it uses its reserves from in its roots to keep growing. But what you want to do to grow topsoil is you want to give the plant the opportunity to push sugars back through its roots and out into the soil, and it can only do this if it's given itself a chance to recover. This feeds microbes, which then feeds earthworms, and you get more life in your soil and you get a better nutrient cycle. It's called the macrophagy cycle, whereby the plants actually take up the body of dead bacteria, they consume it whole, and also as those bacterial bodies are broken down through earthworm excreta, those nutrients are extracted by the plant. So you need a healthy ecosystem in your soil in order to sustain your plants without artificial fertilizers. So the question is then, how does this apply to a load of sheep eating mustard in an arable field? Well, in a straight arable field, all we're doing is letting the plants grow to maturity and taking seeds off. So we're extracting out of this system. The benefit of the mustard is that in what would otherwise be a rest period, so between August and the establishment of a spring crop in February, March time, there's quite a lot of sunshine to be had, especially in August and September. So the mustard is planted, it grows. Now during that growth phase, it's trying to establish as fast as possible. So it's trying to access nutrition, and when it grabs hold of the nutrient, puts it into the body of the plant. So it's working the soil quite hard. Let me go this way, stay away from the electric fence a little bit. So that part of the growing cycle is referred to as nutrient capture. And that can be done with any of the fast growing plants. So oats is a very good crop for that, but also mustard, which is what we use. We try not to use oats. Oats is what we started with. It's a very good crop to learn about cover crops. It's cheap, very easy to establish. You can just pour it in a fertilizer spinner and spin it on at 100 kilos a hectare. That'll do you a pretty effective cover crop. You could use spring oats. When we talk about spring crops and winter crops, it refers to the planting date. So winter wheat would be planted in the autumn stroke winter. Spring wheat would be planted in the spring. Now the same goes for oats. You can get a winter varieties planted in the autumn, or you can get spring varieties which are planted in the spring. Quite often spring varieties are frost sensitive, so if you get a really big frost, so like a really cold frost, maybe -5, -6, you will kill some of the spring crops. Whereas interestingly, some of the winter crops, they need cold temperatures in order to generate fruit, i.e. seeds. So that's called vernalization. So we have a few varieties which actually need sort of a cold shock. I think apples is a good crop and a good example as well. But we have some wheat varieties that need a cold shock in order to generate seeds in the spring. A few years ago there was a very interesting variety. It needed vernalization, and as a result of a wet autumn it was planted late, and farmers were quite dismayed when they suddenly realized when at harvest that there was a low yield because it hadn't vernalized during the winter. The point about vernalization is that we can use it with our cover crops. So a crop like mustard is frost sensitive, so we can actually use the winter to kill it off. And you can use, in the case of oats for example, you can use spring oats which appear to grow faster in the autumn, as if they're in some sort of panic mode, like, oh my goodness, summer's nearly finished, let's get growing. They grow faster in the autumn, and then they're a bit more sensitive to a frost in the winter, so you can kill them off. There is no doubt that regenerative farming needs a focus on low costs. You can't approach it with the same mindset as conventional agriculture. So for example, if you say, I'm just going to establish a cover crop and then I'm going to cultivate it in the spring, what you will do is you will maintain your fixed cost, and you won't be utilizing all of the benefit of the cover crop in order to lower your cost base. And you could well suffer a reduction in yield, but if you haven't reduced your cost base, you won't be protected from that potential yield crash. So it's very important that you make the mindset adjustment to try and reduce your fixed costs at the same time. So you're thinking about how you're going to manage your residue in the spring is really important when you establish your cover crop in the autumn. So using this as an example, we have just got mustard and veg in here, so it's mixed. It's a mixed cover crop, not very many, not really multi-species, but it's got a few mixes in it. And the benefit is that it grows and establishes quite well. Now people get quite excited about mustard. because it's a relatively big crop. It's quite tall, sort of talking mid-thigh here. There's quite a lot of biomass. As you can see, it's just starting to flower. However, it's not biomass above ground that matters. It's biomass below ground, which contributes through the roots to the building of organic matter. And as you can see, the roots of mustard are not massive, and it's worth saying it's not these bigger roots, but it's the finer root hairs, sort of this sort of stuff here, that they contribute to the soil organic matter, whereas something like this provides wormholes and drainage for the future crops. So future crops, the roots of future crops will follow the hole made by this root in order to access nutrition quicker. So in the case of this cover crop, it's grown, it's got a good biomass above ground, but it's put some roots down, which makes the passage of the cash crop later in the year easier, improves drainage, provides worm channels, but you've got this lot of stuff on the top. Now, what we could do, just wait for a frost to come and kill it. If you've got a multi-species cover crop where you've got plants that aren't susceptible to frost, you can roll it, or if you want to spend some money, use a crimper roller. But actually, normal Cambridge rolls on a frosty day, fingers crossed you get one. Obviously November at 15 degrees, haven't been many frosts yet, but I had a look at my records about frosty days the other day, and they're mostly in January. So out with the heavy frosts are in January. Come out here with the Cambridge rolls, quite wide, -5, -6. You can cover quite a large area. You crimp the stalks, and interestingly, it's pretty good for controlling grass weeds as well as broadleafs like the mustard. So, but we don't have to worry about it with mustard because it's frost sensitive. So you're in a situation now where you've got roots and you've got a mechanism for controlling the canopy above ground, because you want to try and direct drill to minimize soil disturbance in order to plant in the spring. We're just arriving at some more sheep. One of my dogs just got an electric shock from the electric fence, so they're all being a bit cagey. Look at him. We go all the way round, and he's hiding in the hedge just to try and make sure there are no more nasty electric fences hanging around. So in our case, we've chosen to control the canopy with sheep. Now, coming back to our bison in America, which is where we all started from, a couple of things aid soil generation, soil disturbance. So actually, where the animals, pawed at the ground and had one of their big fights, or had a screeching turn as they tried to escape from a wolf. So where they disturb the soil disturbance is actually important to us to a lesser extent, as in the top profile. Nature hates a vacuum, so it gets extra seeds to grow. So back here, so this example here, there's a little bit of high ground there behind the dog. It's only about 1 meter, but sheep are absolutely obsessed with being the king of the castle. And as you can see, there's loads of footprints here from where the sheep have been around, and that extra disturbance will cause extra seeds to grow. So what I should have shown you is just those sheep just tearing off through the mustard just a second ago. So extra disturbance there as they run away from me, the dog or the wolf, helps encourage extra seeds to grow. So that helps the savanna regenerate. It's nature's equivalent of a direct drill. The other benefit is that the saliva and the feces both contribute to increasing the microbiology in that top layer of soil. I can't remember where the research comes from, but actually saliva is surprisingly important. We all know the benefit of organic manures, and we obviously apply digestate and compost, wood-based compost. So that would be the equivalent of leaf litter, and for the digestate, that's like food waste. So yes, standard organic manures. Now, it's quite expensive paying for the spreading of those manures. Now, with the sheep, it gives us the opportunity for them to walk around. They're four-legged muck spreaders, and they spread it evenly throughout the whole field. And unlike the digestate and the compost, they add that saliva element. Now, there's actually some interesting research all about the medication we give sheep to control parasites, internal parasites, has a profound effect on their microbiology that comes out of the back end. Dung beetles in cattle, I haven't heard quite so much discussion about it in sheep, but very relevant to cattle. However, this is nice clean ground. Sheep haven't been on here for maybe 3-4 years, so there's no worm burden, no parasite burden. The crop's quite tall, so they're going to be eating from the top down. It is ideal for them. And once they do have to adjust to the taste of the mustard. It's quite peppery, so it takes them a little while, but once they do adjust, they do hit it hard. And interesting, you get little spots like this where you can see they've started nipping off the tops of the plant, and this is how their grazing pattern works. You get most of the crop, which is this tall, undisturbed, and then you start getting these little semicircles here where they've munched it. And quite often I think it coincides with improved nutrition. So I saw one last week where the sheep had munched all around a badger's latrine in order to obviously access something extra from the crop. So this is the field that is being grazed, and in here is the badger latrine, and as you can see, the sheep have targeted that first. It's much more grazed. And closer in, beyond the electric fence, you can see a week into grazing, and they've taken most of the top foliage and flowers off, leaving more stems behind. So they will target selected zones first, and it sits at this high height, and you think, oh my goodness, nothing's happening. And shepherds put more and more sheep in. I've got WhatsApp from my shepherd on the light land saying, crikey, I've added another 100 ewes to your flock. So the tendency is at this stage to start panicking and putting more and more ewes in. I'm quite happy with that, because realistically this crop's not going to make it through beyond sort of Christmas, New Year. It's going to start dying by then. So the grazing window is relatively short. And coming back to our research about yield penalty post grazing, I really want these animals off pretty soon. So I want big hit, lots of grazing, and then get off my land so the soil can recover. It needs about 4 to 6 weeks before I don't suffer a yield penalty as a result of grazing. Now, personally, I understand the research, and that leads to long-term soil building. but we are struggling to convert that into yield benefit in the year of grazing. So the problem is, how do you measure what would or wouldn't happen in year 2? Very difficult for us. It's like a proper research project rather than a farmer experiment. So generally, I understand the logic. I hope that it works. We don't see a yield benefit in year 1. Having said that, we have improved our spring drilling technique, and we haven't tried a grazing event since we changed our spring establishment technique to include the harrowing. So maybe that would benefit, but we shall see. All right, so thank you very much for watching this explanation of cover crops and what we do and how it fits into the regenerative cycle. Morning everybody, welcome to a very wet and blustery Saturday. So we're out crop walking. We're in a field of oilseed rape. As you can see, it looks a bit different. So a quick recap. This was established with the Claydon drill sort of middle of August, mid-August. I'll put the date here. As you can see, it's got some very tall elements in it. This is not a massive outbreak of charlock. It is in fact mustard. So this was established by the Claydon drill. It's into a stubble, a 9-ton crop of wheat. Very good for this year, really happy with it. However, we chopped the straw, which left a lot of residue on the top. Jack had a real struggle drilling it. We then went back and stubble raked it twice in order to spread out the straw. We actually still had trouble, and some of it had to be picked up with a JCB and loaded in the trailer and taken off. But as you can see, it hasn't made a difference to the distribution of the plant population. Now this is a summer cover crop, so it's got loose linseed, vetch, Phacelia, vetch, linseed, Phacelia, mustard, and oilseed rape. So the oilseed rape is in at about 5 kilos, and we reduced the mustard by 5 kilos in order, because we were worried about competition. So if I just pan the camera around for a second. So if we just go back a little bit, here's a tram line. Now earlier in the year when we visited this field, we were worried about these intermediate tram lines like this, where we spread digestate at 24 meters, but then we came back and spread compost at 12. So if you have a look here, we have actually got plants filling in the wheelings. My hope is that a good plant like that will provide some coverage. I did a video earlier on where we had a look at this is a clear field variety of rape, and we've come back and sprayed out the companion crops, and as you can see, this mustard, he's having a bit of a hard time. But interestingly, the vetch seems to have survived the clear field. So not really too worried at this stage, but that might become more of an issue at harvest. Again here, intermediate tram line, and the rape down here, and the rape is filling in. So looks like we escaped that scenario. Here we go, proper tram line here, and as you can see, nice and clear. So diverse cover crop to provide the companions. We've sprayed it with Clearfield, that and a good strong frost. The mustard is dying back, and it doesn't seem to have affected the competition from the mustard, doesn't seem to have affected the rape too badly. And as by way of catch up, the reason we're doing this is flea beetle, which is a pest that drills holes in the leaf of young oilseed rape and then lays eggs at the base of the plant. The larvae then crawls up and drills into the plant and sits inside the rape during the winter, sucking the sap, and then in the spring and this is the real killer of flea beetle. Really, you have to have done in a conventional system, you have to have done your first nitrogen application before you know if your rape is affected by the flea beetle. So you've invested sort of 80% of your year's investment in the crop before you find out if it's been attacked by the pest or not. So it's really serious. This rape is looking really good. Fingers crossed. It's been a low flea beetle year, but even so, fingers crossed that we get through. I've got two crops, two blocks down to this mix combo. One is in a high pigeon area. This isn't a pigeon area except possibly for around this tree. So I'm reasonably hopeful about this one. The other one on the light land, fortunately, was planted earlier, so hopefully the rape is stronger and more established, but I'm a bit more fearful about that one. This year, massive amount of tree fruit, so acorns. Everybody's complaining about acorns on their lawn. Not quite my problem, but beech moss is very relevant to pigeons. More beech moss in the woods, less pigeon pressure. So two factors. My rape looks reasonably strong and there's a good lot of beech moss in the woods, so I'm hopeful that we can avoid the flea beetle and then secondly avoid the pigeon attack. So looks like by way of recap, it looks like we have dodged the flea beetle and the compost and digestate spray hasn't damaged our crop too much. We looked as if we've got a GAI of probably 2 here, which means that what's that? I think that means over 100 kilos, but I'll just do the calculations here of nitrogen in the crop. I probably won't provide another application of artificial fertilizer in the spring. Our carbon trading system means that most of the big differential for us is not applying fertilizer, and so in order to maximize my carbon payments, I won't be applying nitrogen out of the bag. So we just provide nitrogen, slow release from the compost, more immediate release from the digestate. If I get an opportunity to apply it in the spring and the crop's not too big, I will take it, but I think that's probably unlikely. So it will be a nice to have if I can get away with it, but I'm not budgeting for it. So thank you for sticking with us on this blustery Saturday. Enjoy your nice warm viewing inside. See you next time. Bye.